If you grew up when computers were a niche item that sat in the family room that the whole family had access to, then your relationship with technology is probably very different than most young people today, including myself. A computer was something that you logged into when you needed to check your email, download a song, type up a quick paper, or play a quick game. And then computers started to get smaller, smaller, and smaller. And now the computers that we put into our pockets every single day are stronger than we really even need them to be. Very quickly, phones went from being a part of our lives to our entire lives being part of our phone. Smartphones have been around now for about 20 years. That's older than a lot of the people who are using them. And I've been doing my best to combat my screen time and my overall reliance on my phone. Since the last time you and I have had a chat, I've lowered my screen time on Instagram and I haven't missed it. And I'm still fighting my screen time on TikTok while balancing editing videos on the app. And this breakup all started with one of my favorite new pieces of technology. I'm going on 2 years since I bought this iPod, and in the last couple of months, it has gotten a lot of great use out of me. But the problem is when these iPods get old, the battery on the inside starts to expand, and this is a 20-year-old iPod, so the battery was starting to expand, and the only reason I was able to notice was because when it expands, because the battery sits behind the screen, it raises the screen a little bit, which causes black dots to appear on the display. And I first noticed that about a month ago, and I was looking at the iPod, and it still functions just fine. I've noticed that the battery really doesn't hold much of a charge anymore, which was inevitable. It's a 20-year-old battery, and it was already starting to get shaky when I first got it. But at this point, we're gonna do some surgery. Okay, shout out to DankPods. If you haven't ever watched a DankPods video, do yourself a favor and watch one after you're done watching this. We're gonna take these bad boys, a couple of these bad boys. I think I got like 7 of these. We're gonna stab them into the iPod, and we're gonna replace. Not only are we gonna replace the battery, we're going to replace the battery, and then we're also going to replace the hard disk drive with this flash drive. And that'll allow us to essentially run all of the storage on this iPod through an SD card instead of this optical disk drive. Now, I've never done this before, and from what I've heard, this model of iPod, this is the 6th generation, is the hardest to open up. So wish me luck. I'm going to do my best. Hopefully I don't cut myself, and hopefully I don't scratch up my iPod too much. All right, so far I actually don't think I'm doing too bad. I thought this was going to be a lot worse, but maybe I'm just getting arrogant. We've got these jammed in there. From what I know is once you get these hooks unpronged, it should just slip over, but I was able to get to the little part where you could see the battery starting to expand right there. That was my first sign that the battery was starting to expand on this iPod. And I think the pressure of getting these things into the iPod side is definitely causing it to, be a little bit more visible. So wish me luck. We're going to keep going. Okay, yeah. I severely underestimated that and chipped my fingernails a ton. These are super bent now. Look at these, man. These are super bent now. But we got it open. We got it open. Oh, there we go. There we go, baby girl. All right, we got the bad boy open. We removed the old battery and the old hard drive, which here's the hard drive. Here is the battery, and you can see just how expanded this thing was. Look at that. This is supposed to be flat, and you can see it's got that big old bump. Okay, I'm gonna keep it a buck. I definitely overestimated my abilities, and I broke the iPod because as I was putting things together, I had accidentally pulled on the battery ribbon cable, and that had ripped off the connector from the motherboard. Obviously, without this piece, the iPod is useless because if you can't connect the battery to the device, to the motherboard, then there's no power running through it, which makes it completely unusable. So more money is going to need to be spent in order to fix my mistake. At this point, I am probably just going to send it to somebody else to get it fixed because this requires soldering, and that's just out of my level of expertise. Really, I had no level of expertise. But as for how I'm going to listen to music every single day, at least portably, I do still have my phone. I could always use that, but really, I want to use the iPod. So I bought myself an iPod Mini that's already pre-modded, saved myself the hassle. So I'm just going to have to wait till that gets here, and I'm going to have to pretty much put all my music on there, and until then, I'm stuck with just my phone, and for home listening, on the bright side, I still have my record player. Now, it's not just these fun iPods that have been keeping me away from my phone lately. This other new piece of technology has been a big part of my life lately. The Nintendo 3DS, and technically, this is actually the Nintendo 2DS, the new Nintendo 2DS XL. This is a device that I bought many, many years ago when the Nintendo Switch had already been out for a year or two, and I had really wanted to upgrade my original Nintendo 3DS system. I had the original Flare Red 3DS that I got for Christmas when I believe I was in the 5th or the 6th grade. So when I became a teenager with an income, I ended up walking over to Best Buy one day and picking up this Nintendo 2DS. Now this Nintendo 2DS really didn't get a lot of use over the last couple of years because I just honestly didn't use my 3DS very often because I had a Switch and really I was just doing other things other than playing Pokemon games on my Nintendo. Well, nostalgia hits hard. And I've since buried this out of my drawers, and I've since updated everything on this system, and I've been playing Pokemon non-stop on this Nintendo over the last couple of days. And that has brought me so much joy, so much joy. My screen time has taken a big hit because I'm otherwise spending time playing games in handheld form. And let me tell you, man, handhelds have always been my go-to. I've always been somebody who prefers the handhelds over the consoles, and I feel like the reason for that is because of my very first console when I was a kid. While my older brother was playing some PlayStation 2, I was playing some Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy was probably my favorite system of all time. I spent countless hours on this Game Boy. I had a previous Game Boy that the L and R buttons don't work anymore. That was navy blue, and I played tons of games on this, tons of games. And my favorite, of course, was some Pokemon. You know how hard it is to find these things in good condition these days for a reasonable price? There's no such thing. And can you believe my friend gave me that copy of Pokemon Emerald when we were like 8 years old and it was my birthday? And he just had it lying around and he said, "Here, you play it." But replaying through some of my old favorite childhood games along with some new ones has brought me so much joy and remembered why I loved handheld gaming so much in the first place. Because I didn't have to sit in front of a giant TV to play my games. I could play my games while I was laying down in bed. I could play 30 minutes of Pokemon before I went to bed. I could play 15 minutes of Pokemon before I went to work. I have a blast playing handheld games because they were so easy to play. They didn't demand you play for an hour to beat a simple level. For most games, you could play in just a couple of minutes, save your game, and go on and go to school. And especially one like this with the cool Pokeball design, man, that's just freaking awesome. And the button, you can press it in too, it makes even some noise. It doesn't do anything, but it makes a noise. That's so freaking cool, man. You look like the flyest dude on the planet. You pull this out of your pocket, you say, "Anybody want to play some Nintendo real fast?" My nephew loves this console. Every time I pull it out, he's always so amazed by it because he's been playing Switch his whole life, and he's never seen one of these things on his own. If it can impress my nephew, then I know it's cool. And the last little bit of technology that's been keeping my eyes off of my phone is actually the oldest technology in the book. Literally. I learned to fall in love with reading again when I graduated from college, and I've been reading books pretty much nonstop since. I don't always have the most free time to read them, but when I do, I try to take advantage of them and keep my eyes off of the screen. But even the old technology has gotten some updates over the last couple of years, right? So this is my e-reader that my brother got me for Christmas last year. If you watch the very first video on this channel, you'll actually find me talking about this thing. While I do prefer the feeling of paper books, this is a beautiful device to have when I'm walking at the gym and I'm listening to the audiobook and I don't want to get my pages all wet from the sweat coming out of my head. Or if I'm taking a quick trip and I don't have time to stuff 2 or 3 books in my bag, I can throw this into my bag, put it in my pocket even, and I've got books deluxe ready to go. And look, all of this stuff is great. It's wonderful. I love having it ready to go and at my whim. But as great as all of this stuff is, it's led me to ask myself an important question. A couple weeks ago, I went to the theaters to watch Marty Supreme, and I very much enjoyed the movie. By the way, you should stop at your local movie theater, support them, okay? Keep them alive. But I digress. I was watching the movie, and I was having a good time, and I was starting to believe in this character, Marty Mauser, who was so delusional about the success that was coming his way, and that he was so optimistic about making it happen regardless of what was thrown at him. He was so much of a believer in himself that the audience starts to believe in him no matter how much the odds are stacked against him. And I've kind of been feeling that way lately. A little bit of that has maybe rubbed off on me, where I'm feeling like the success is starting to come, it's coming at me, and I'm going to do everything I can to grab that success and put it in front of my face. That's how I've been feeling lately. I've been feeling like Marty Supreme, minus all the negative things that happen to him in the movie because I think I'm invincible. Ha 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 ha, joke. But I think some of that radical optimism, shout out Dua Lipa, ended up rubbing off on me, where I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling like things are starting to go my way. I'm feeling like I'm putting the pieces together and things are starting to make sense, especially when it comes to this YouTube channel, and I'm feeling very excited about it. And I just wanted to share that with everyone. So the question then lies, is replacing these smartphone screens with other technologies actually doing anything to kill my smartphone addiction? I'm staying away from my phone, sure, but I'm just replacing it with another screen that I'm putting in front of my face. How can that be any more beneficial than just being on my phone? The answer is probably pretty obvious. When you spend time on your phone scrolling, you're training your brain to mindlessly scroll until enough time has passed for you to do something else. And with the way that algorithms are built today, they are trying to keep you on their respective apps and websites for as long as possible. And a lot of the time, you're not even being shown the specific accounts and content that you follow on these apps. Every social platform has essentially created their own For You page. So yes, a lot of times I'm replacing the smartphone screen with just another screen. But instead of just scrolling, I'm taking my attention and putting it somewhere that I chose to indulge in. Something like a book or a game that I chose with intention. I would much rather realize that I had spent an hour reading a book or an hour playing a game than realize that I had spent an hour scrolling through social media. And probably for no reason. At least that way I know I'm actually having fun or learning something, and at the very least, I am in control of what I'm doing. So yeah, I think replacing my phone with these single-purpose devices is killing my smartphone addiction. Prior to the 2000s, people weren't really glued to their screens the way they are now because phones could really only do one thing. Sure, during that time there were dumb phones that you could use to browse the web or play a game or two, but it wasn't until the first iPhones came out that a small screen could do so much. Too much. I don't feel bad that my attention is just being transferred to somewhere else. Often just a different screen, because those screens that I'm transferring my attention to have much more purpose than what my phone has. Something that I bought for myself over the holiday season was this little Doc Martens clutch. It's just a small bag that I bought to kind of replace this old Nike one that I had. The old Nike one that I had is still perfectly good. It's made of like polyester though, or I don't know, whatever freaking material it is, but it's like an athletic bag. So I usually use it for the gym now or when I go to concerts and festivals. Whereas this is, something a little bit more fashionable that I could actually, wear at an outing or something without looking too much like a purse, I suppose. But I bought it in the hopes that I could use it to, carry all my little trinkets in, right? So I don't have my DS because I may have left that at work. Sorry, oopsies. So we can throw that in there. Here's an iPod Nano. I know it's not the iPod that I've been showing off on the channel, but it'll have to do for now until I, get the replacement for my current broken, unusable iPod. You can store that in there. And, if you're going to be using an iPod, you're going to need some classic wired headphones. You can throw that in there. You can throw something like this little pocket notebook and pen in there. If the day comes that I end up buying a digital camera, it might fit in there as well. And you just, tie it all up. You clutch it back up. Or I said clamp it back up, I guess would be the right word. And you got this nice little stylish bag where all these things, kind of fit. And I can just throw over my shoulder and use to carry all my things without it, being inconvenient. I have them all in there. Sure, I might get made fun of. Sure, people might say that I have a purse with me. Whatever, man. If you're still afraid of what people are going to say about what you wear, then you're just going to be wearing the same 3 outfits for the rest of your life. I'm still not done fighting this fight. Like any other addiction, smartphone addiction got hands. But I'm starting to put up a fight after letting myself get bullied for the last 10 years. We've hit a bump in the road with the iPod where I just cannot use it right now. That's the risk you take when you use older technology, okay? You're gonna have some malfunctions, you might try to fix something, and you might end up making it worse. That's my scenario right now. But the Nintendo 2DS, 3DS, whatever you want to call it, has been my favorite device over the last couple of weeks. You guys just don't understand how much I love this thing. When I was a kid, I was really into handheld gaming. I didn't own a phone until I was already in high school. I didn't own an iPod or an MP3 player until later on in life. And the Nintendo DSi and the Nintendo 3DS were some of the best because they had the added feature of being able to put an SD card inside the system. So not only did you have a handheld, you had an MP3 player. You could take pictures with the device. Really, this was my first camera. I used to make stop motion videos with the camera on my Nintendo DSi. And most importantly, you could play games. I've never been much of a person to play games on my phone, at least not in my adult years, but having this 3DS console allows me to pick up a game anytime I want, and it keeps me away from my phone. I spent thousands of hours on these games playing both by myself and with my friends back in the day. And if you couldn't tell by now, I was a nerd. I remember being really into the nerd stuff like Nintendo when I was a kid, and that was right around the time that it became uncool to like Nintendo because Xbox and PlayStation were what the big kids were playing. So I often didn't tell my friends that I owned a 3DS because I didn't want them to know that I was a nerd. I was embarrassed, even though I spent most of my afternoons playing on this device. So it does feel good now as an adult that nerd stuff like this and Pokemon have become cool, and that a console like this is now considered retro and cool. And I'm still reading more than ever, and I'm hoping to keep that up. And I'm hoping that number of books read within 1 year just keeps rising and rising as time goes by. And I'll for sure keep you updated on my reads as I go through them. And this isn't where I stop. My smartphone still has a very strong grip on me. And I feel like there is still more that I can do to fight this addiction. Maybe I could start by writing in my journal more often. Maybe I need a digital camera to take photos instead of using my phone. Maybe I need to go into my phone and replace every single app that distracts me and takes time away from my day and replace it with something physical, something dedicated. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that I'm slowly taking back control of my life away from this phone.